for you.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that pretty much the end of Raucous, the money issues? Uh
Absolutely. I feel like aside from that project, I produced or I actually produced a song for Pharoahe Monch that's on my discography that was intended for Internal Affairs
mhm.
called Liven It Up. It was supposed to be on Internal Affairs, but it kind of worked out in my favor. Before Raucous folded, this is like 99, they licensed my song to be put in the Next Friday movie soundtrack. So it was on the soundtrack and in the movie, and the album went gold. And Pharrell's album came and did what it did. Blame that on Raucous Records in terms of the success, either the success or failures, however you look at it. But uh, when we were doing the Raucous album or the B Miners project, we dealt with a lot of sample clearance issues. We also dealt with a lot of artist clearances, like meaning that say we paid anyone from Exhibit to Ghostface or somebody on the album. Now you're dealing with the record companies that they're signed to, and the conflicts at that time. There was a lot of label wars behind the scenes between Priority and Loud Records, and it was just a lot, So they wouldn't clear records we had already paid for. So it was like taking a loss if we couldn't keep them on the album. Aside from sample clearances, we're
Right.
talking about paying more than 5,000 for one sample clearance. That
Wow.
kind of that kind of stuff, and
Right.
that could add up when you're producers who sample and you're making an album. Think about that without me getting into the details.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that played a huge part in how complicated the sample game became, like in the late 90s into the early 2000s.
Right.
I definitely suffered from that.
You got another gold plaque with Fat Joe. How did that come about?
Actually, same A&R, Rob Tulo, that I dealt with when I was dealing with Artifacts. He dealt with Joe when Joe first signed Atlantic. But what Joe did was he did his deal under a different company, not Big Beat Records at the time. He did it with, I think he partnered with some company named Mystic Recordings, and then did that album under Atlantic. And I placed the record. I sampled Luther Vandross. So I pieced the record together. I took a whole different approach than what Pete Rock did with the song with Heavy D, Got Me Waiting,
Mm.
using the same sample. I took a completely different approach. I took like a street club approach. And that song went through a lot of changes too. I did the song originally, and Joe put R&B singer Veronica on there. I don't know if you remember her.
Yeah.
She was like Latin R&B singer named Veronica. She's from New York. He had her on the hook. For some reason, he wasn't feeling it. He wasn't satisfied. So he took her off, and then we put Pun on the record. And then we did two different versions of Pun's chorus, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then we kept the one that you hear now. And then when we cleared the sample, uh, Luther Vandross' estate claimed 85% of the publishing shares. So me, Fat Joe, and Big Pun had to split 15%.
Wow.
So that's a little education for your listeners about the publishing game and samples, and if you're not mindful. And mind you, if you listen to the way I produced that record, I barely used 2 bars
Right.
of the sample. I just had the guitar part. That's it. 85%. That's it. Everything else was me. Drums, bass line, everything. I fully composed that record with the exception of that guitar sample.
So at this time, is things like this starting to put a bad taste in your mouth as a producer?
It's a catch 22 because hip hop is built off of the art of sampling, like quality hip hop. Now, mind you, as I was saying, composing, I'm capable of composing. I'm capable of making music without sampling. I've worked my way to that ability. And, with today's market, as you can see, there's a lot of hip hop records that are made without sampling that, benefits the composer because now you're keeping all your publishing. So I understand that model, but creatively, I'm still inspired by music and records I hear of different genres that give me ideas to make something. So I like to be able to do a little bit of everything. I like to balance sampling with live instruments, sampling completely just the samples and drums, or completely compose music. And you know what I mean? I like to, run the gamut of all those things based on inspiration.
Right. 2001, it's time for Nas to return with Stillmatic.
Mm,
How did you link with Mr. Nasir? Did you already have the track made, or did you guys
good
tailor?
question. So rewind. I was still working on the Beat Miners album because we worked on that album for almost a year before it came out with Raucus, right? So we're at the tail end of finishing up whatever the Beat Miners album was going to be when it came out. And one of my best friends happens to be a producer named Prestige, formerly of Bad Boy Hitman. So he was like, "Yo, I got word that Nas is looking for music." Talking to his A&R at the time was Lenny Nicholson, who was A&R at Sony back then, and he also oversaw um, A. Marie, who happened to become his wife not too long after that, maybe a few years later. I think they're still married. So I submitted the music. You know how, as a producer, you submit music, but you don't think about it after some time goes by. You just keep it going because you got to pay bills. You know, you got to work. Then I got the call back. I was like, oh, okay. And Lenny reached out to me and was like, yeah, Nas recorded one of your joints. You know, we want to finish it and we want to get you in the studio to work with him and finish it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I went to Right Track Studios in Times Square. I got to meet Nas for the first time. I mean, I've seen him before because of D&D days. Mind you, he was doing Primo, you know, Illmatic and all the classics he did years back in the same studio as me, but we never worked together. But now I'm meeting him, just me, I'm working with him, you know? And the energy was great. You know, he was just, you know, real humble and he was, you know, asking me like what inspired me to make the beat. And it's like I didn't have an answer for him. I knew in my mind, but I didn't really answer him, which I probably should have. I was surprised he asked me that. You know, like I'm so used to artists that don't really get into the creative energy of making music. So I understand why Nas is the way he is and why he's still successful because he cares,
Right.
you know? And I um, I worked on the record at when I first heard it, he had already recorded most of his vocals by the time I heard it. Because he recorded it in the Bahamas and then he finished the album in New York. And that's when you get the callbacks, you know, whoever's producing the music. And it's a respect thing because, you know, we were going into the digital age, well, not what it is now, but we were going into the digital age back then. This is like 2001. And you know how it goes. People record records, don't call you. They just give you the credits and you don't even be involved in the mix. They'll do that to you if you let them.
Mm.
But I think between Nas and Lenny, they respected the producers involved in the music enough to call them. So thankfully he did that and I was able to meet him and work with him hands on. And I gave him my input on what I heard at that time. And I felt like I had loved the concept, but I was just like, man, it's kind of a diss record. You know what I mean? I kind of wanted a record of my own, stand on its own, not about going at nobody and make a hit record of a potential single. Cause you know, I'm competing as a producer. I want to state my claim in the market.
Right.
But I was like, you know what? This is Nas. You know, he has something to say. Let's go. So I just went and put the record together, gave my opinion. He actually went back in and redid some of his vocals based on my advice. And then we collaborated on how to go about the outro. The way he's talking at the end of the song, that
Mhm.
was that was off the strength of me and him talking. You know what I mean? And vibing and what you call it? As we mixed the record, you know, I just made sure the mix was solid. Shout out to Kevin Krause, the engineer, excellent engineer, man.
Right.
Killed the mix on that record. You know, and what I loved about that record, all live music, except for and then the drums is you know hip hop raw sample drums, but the music was chord progressions that was done you know on a rolling software. And I'm trying to remember one other thing I could share about that song. What I liked was that he ended off the record because you know he was a little bit more aggressive in what he was saying. He changed it enough to make it more of a, you know, I'm gonna say what I gotta say, but the goal of saying this is to uplift y'all. You know what I'm saying? To make things better. And I like the way it came out. So that's why I mixed the record and I ended the record with instrumentation is just open
Right.
because it lets you think. You know what I'm saying? It's like the beat stops and you just like zone. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's the approach I took. And you know, the feedback was instantaneous. Like as soon as I finished the record, uh Jungle, who was in the studio, he was like, "Yo, we taking this record to the hood." I never forget him saying that. And then rest in peace, K Slay. K Slay was one of the first DJs to play it. You know what I'm saying? Um, it was just a crazy time for me because again, this album was made in the middle of the Jay-Z Nas beef.
Mm,
Like, I'm in the studio, he had security.
wow.
Like it was not a game.
Right.
so it was a crazy time, but it was a great time at the same time for hip hop. Like the music, people was really like trying to make good music. Like, yo, we can't play no games. We coming for to win. You know what I'm saying? And uh the last blessing I say about that record is that it was like an alpha and omega place for me because mind you, I said early in my career I was interning in sessions with KRS One, Coogee Rap, Rakim. So if you notice, Nas does the hook and he's saying the bridge is over, because he's using it as a concept in the conversation of the song about Queensbridge, right?
Mhm.
So because of that, he had to clear that. No sample, but he had to clear the writers for
Mm,
that hook.
mm.
KRS One gets 33 and a third percent of the writers of that song to this day.
Wow.
Yeah, because he sings that bridge is over in there. So it's funny. It's like I'm paying it forward, and I didn't even plan to do that.
Right.
So to an extent, on the publishing side, Karis One's still eating off that Stillmatic album, thanks to me.
Let me ask you a quick question. It always kind of baffled me. Rappers kind of feel like, if they take a sample, maybe they don't want to pay that artist.
Right.
So why do you think it is that a rapper, when they get sampled, they want the money for that instead of just letting the artist use?
That's a good question. I remember DJ Premier argued that when he did Ten Crack Commandments, and
Right.
Chuck D was playing that 1, 2, 3, but he wanted that bread.
Right.
He knew Puff and Big had it. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, honestly, in all fairness to him, that made the song. That little countdown part that Primo put in that record, it's a big part of the song.
Right.
But I know I never really argued that, and I know that I've been sampled once or twice. Kanye West sampled me way early in his career. I caught it, but the average person wouldn't have caught it. He did a track for Common like early in his career. I'm talking about when Common was on Relativity Records.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And and then one of Redman's albums, I think the Muddy Waters album, the very first song, Is He For Real? He sampled the Floor of the Flash Ghost God. It goes, Is he for real? It can't be. It's like in the intro.
Hmm.
He sampled that one line from Rock. And
Right.
they literally cleared it. Def Jam cleared it. So I get publishing for that song.
Wow.